Hey, thanks so much for supporting our program. You know, the Fed and the other reporting agencies just came out and said that the first quarter we had 3.2% annualized growth in the United States. That's pretty good. In fact, that's really good. And when you look at the last quarter of last year, it was way, way down. What's the difference between the two? That the Fed turned the faucet back on after Donald Trump started yelling and screaming at the chairman of the Fed, who is now living in absolute fear and terror of Donald Trump. The question in my mind, and I think that this is something we all need to be looking at, and this is something that, you know, if you read the financial media, read the Financial Times, The Economist, you'll find a lot of speculation about this, is how long can the Fed keep this up? We are massively in debt as a country. The Fed has been throwing money into the economy by buying Treasury bonds. It has been basically stimulating and keeping interest rates low, stimulating the economy at a time when, frankly, stimulus isn't needed. But Donald Trump wants to get himself reelected, which is what's driving this whole thing. And at some point, the Fed is going to have to say, okay, enough. We have poured enough gasoline on this fire, which is exactly what they're doing. And at some point, they're going to have to say, we're out of gasoline, or the fire's too big, or to torture this metaphor. And the question in my mind is, will they be able to sustain this phony baloney boom that is being held in place purely by the Fed pouring money into the economy and keeping interest rates low? Will they be able to sustain this all the way to the November election? Or is it going to be like it was in 2008? In 2008, the economists inside the Bush administration knew, they were just looking at the numbers in early 2008. This is the last, the election year, right? And George W. Bush is president. And in January, February, March of that year, they're looking at these numbers going, or actually mid-late 2007, going, this thing's going to go down, and it's going to go down hard. And from everything that we can tell, nobody's ever subpoenaed the internal conversations, but looking at the behavior of the Fed and of Congress and of the White House, it looks like they thought, the Bush administration thought, that they could postpone the crash until just like the day after the election. And that way, if a Democrat won, which is what happened, Barack Obama won the election, if a Democrat won, they would immediately say, see, the economy just crashed, and it's because a Democrat got elected. And they misjudged how bad things were. And so the economy crashed, 9 months before the election in a big way. So the question in my mind is, how long before we get back to that point? Because that crash was never resolved. We never fixed the underlying problems. We didn't break up the big banks. In fact, they become more concentrated. We didn't stop flooding the money with currency, or the economy with money, because, and in fact, we've increased that. We didn't do anything about the national debt. It's been radically increased. To a large extent, the economy's been running on the sugar high from the Trump tax cuts, the GOP tax scam. But most importantly, it's the Fed. And it's not just in the United States. There's several countries that are doing this right now at the same time. And in my opinion, in each case, and Turkey is probably the most egregious example of this, in each case, the Fed, their local central bank, is being driven to drive down interest rates to flood the economy with money so that the people in power can stay in power. And there is an endpoint to that. So just, heads up. Keep an eye on what the Fed is doing, because that's going to dictate absolutely everything.